Alrighty, so continuing on with Gaming Week. Today we're going to be talking about a meme that came from gaming culture, which is the NPC, the non-player character. Because in games, it'd be pretty boring if you were the only one there, and just objects flying at you. It's good to have, a nice, interesting world to play around in. And so there's computer characters, there's people in the game that don't actually have a person behind them. They're just, code. And they do monotonous tasks and they're repetitive. They're only coded so well to do specific things. And that's it. And so the meme came out that, hey, some people in real life are suspiciously routine. They're suspiciously predictable. Maybe no one's really playing them. Maybe they too can be written down to a simple algorithm and they're just, an object. They're not actually a person. They're just going around doing their thing. And we've already talked on this channel a bit about how people are treated like objects, right? I mean, that was the whole thing of the prostitution week, right? That, when you're looking at the world, the economy especially, when you say, oh, well, these people do these jobs, you're treating them like an object. You're treating them like, oh man, that's all they are. They provide this benefit to the world, and more importantly, to me. And yeah, that's all they are. That's it. And you kind of forget that they're a person. You know it logically, but you just don't act that way. And we even talked a little bit about that yesterday with copyright, where this mindset that you are the central character of life, and so everyone else, well, forget them, right? That you get to have your copyright and your patent, and you get to say, my efforts are valid, my efforts are important, and if anyone else, wanted to do the same thing, well, forget you. Like, you don't matter. I'm the main character here in this story, right? You're just a side character. Maybe you're even an NPC, right? And so you might think, well, I would disapprove of this meme, that this meme is dehumanizing to people. But actually, this is what satire is supposed to do, right? Because the point of the meme is not that these people actually are not, human beings and we can just, zombie apocalypse them, machine gun them down. Like, that's not what anyone's saying. What people are saying is, isn't it sad that they aren't treating themselves like people? That they aren't going out of their way to, learn and grow and develop and be fully fleshed out characters. Instead, they follow simple algorithms, say, hey, oh, this is bad, this is good, that's all I care about. Go with my emotions, and oh, this situation, I do this. And you just have these nesting of if statements, and then that's their life. That's who they are. And that's really sad, because there's no complexity there. There's nothing personal there. And so the reason the NPC meme is a good thing is precisely because it is mocking them for not acting like a person. That they should be a person. They are a person. They're not an object. But they're not acting like a person. They're not behaving in that way. And, as far as political groups go, there's people on both sides that do this, right? Mostly on the major news networks, right? Whether it's MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News. Like, you know the characters. You could kind of predict what one side's gonna say versus the other side. And there's some exceptions. There's some people that actually have some personality there and actually have their own thoughts and opinions. Yeah, sure, of course. Because there are people. They're not really computer generated, right? It's just they're very predictable. They don't think for themselves. They have an agenda, and so someone else is telling them what to say. And that's just not good. You see, the reason I'm a distributist and the reason why I want essentially government to kind of get out of the way of things is because it is precisely free will that makes us human, right? That, yes, we can decide things. But if our decisions are boiled down to simple if-then statements, well then, it's not really much complexity in that. And so, having the ability to think back on your rationality, why you're doing what you're doing, what led you to this decision, and is that reasonable? Is that good? Maybe your emotions aren't really, helping you. Maybe they're getting in the way. Maybe it's because of some harm that you've had in the past that you feel like you do now. Maybe it actually has nothing to do with the current situation. There's lots of things that go around, and I think one good example of how this dynamic works is race, right? That I did last week was the races of the world. I'm pretty sure that was last week, and I talked about all these different people from all over the world, and I mean, I'm sure someone's offended, right? Obviously. But I think I gave everyone a pretty fair shake. I pretty much said, the good and the bad for pretty much everyone. And yeah, I have my own personal view on things, and I don't think that it's going to be very much the same as many other people. But that's because I've actually gotten to know, people from different places. Not everywhere, not all over the world, right? But enough people in enough places that I make these generalizations, and yeah, I might be wrong. I'm probably wrong on quite a bit. But at least it's an informed opinion, right? And that's a good thing, to have a little bit of an informed opinion. And that's why what people often say is that you should have friends from many races, right? Because so that way you can develop that informed opinion, so that way they're more human to you, right? Because it's easy to say, well, that person doesn't look like me, so they must not be like me. And that's just not true. The more you go around and deal with other people, the more you see, oh, they're just a shade different than me. They're not really that different. It's just, their experiences are different. And that's really it. Deep down, we're all the same. It's just how we experience and how we react. That changes. Personality, that changes. Experience, that changes. But fundamentals, not so much. And so, it's very easy to say it is good to have friends from a lot of races. That's a good thing. But then you got this NPC mindset that says, okay, let's take the goal of making many friends from many races and let's create an efficient algorithm to make that, right? Where they're not actually like caring about these people as people. But now it shifts from the point of learning that everyone's really the same and understanding that our differences are not really that big. It moves away from that point, that purpose, to a goal of how to obtain that, which is just, make friends from all the different races. And so what ends up happening, and I've heard this from so many different people, that what they say is, you should have friends from different races. You should have friends from this race or that race. That way you can understand them better. And I get the logic, but what ends up happening, what it sounds like in reality, is you're no longer judging people by what's on the inside, but you're judging people by what's on the outside. That you all of a sudden switch it and say, okay, I need to make a black friend, a Hispanic friend, an Asian friend. Oh shoot, no, that's racist. There's different parts of Asia. So I'll have an East Asian friend and then a more South Asian friend. Okay. Do I need a European friend? Because I know that, like, all of the white people in America came from Europe, so I already have some friends with that category. But do I need one that's from Europe? Because I think there's like some cultural stuff, and maybe that's different. But what about African American versus black? Like, for example, there's African Americans and they have a certain history, and then there's Caribbean black, right? That's a different history. And then there's actually from Africa, like within a generation or two, black. Like, that's a different culture and a different experience. Oh my god. But what about Native Americans? What about Aboriginal people from all around the world? Oh my goodness. Like, if I have a British friend, am I covered for Australia? If I have a Chinese friend, am I covered for Malaysia? I don't know. So it's like, it becomes Pokemon, right? Every person becomes their own species, right? And it's like, you're this type of element, and if I'm getting my team of 6, then I need that element, right? So that way I can, switch them out and swap them out, so that way I can be effective in whatever I'm doing, right? And maybe, one type of person, hey, I need that electric type to handle the flying and the water type, but at the same time, you need the fire type for whenever they pop out that grass type Pokemon to counter your electric, right? So you gotta mix and match. You gotta get all these different types, and then they're not really people anymore. They're objects. And you see, this is the mindset that gets people to act like NPCs. When they don't look at the wisdom that they're supposed to be getting and the actual purpose for the exercise, when they ignore that and they leave that behind and they say instead, no, but this is the methodology to achieve that. Let me dissect this methodology, remove all emotion, all personability from it, and just look at the raw meat of it and say, okay, I need to get some friends of different colors. Okay, well, what colors are there? And then you list all the colors and you say, you're that shade, you're this shade, you're that other shade. Okay, I'm set. And you're not treating them like people. And you see, that's the thing. There's a big difference between trying not to be racist and not caring about race. There's a big difference there. And so many people are caught up in this trap of trying to not be racist that they end up looking at everyone as a race. That If I say the word black, you think of person before you think of, nighttime, before you think of a leather jacket, before you think of pupil. Like, there's so many things that are black, but just saying black, in your head, you instantly think of race. And the truth of the matter is, pretty much no one has black skin. No one really has white skin. We are different shades of brown and tan and peach and all this stuff. But black? White? Not so much. And so, race is a good example of this, but it can be really anything. That whenever you boil down people to an algorithm, then you don't have to think your own thoughts. You don't have to be yourself. You can just have someone else tell you what your inputs are, and then the outputs are obvious. Where you say, okay, identify what race this individual is, and then someone gives me a script of the PC things that I'm allowed to say to them. Okay, easy peasy, right? And then you don't act like a person anymore. You don't act like a real human. You act like a non-player character. Like you're just there so that way they can walk up and have a dull experience with someone, right? That's it. And you see, the reason I use race as an example is because it's exactly an example that applies to both sides. That both sides of the aisle, the right and left, they both have people on their side that decide all these different things based on race. Where there's people on the left who, once they see someone who is not white, well, then they say, okay, this is someone who's going to be oppressed. So I got to be on the lookout for whoever jerk's going to oppress them. And they never think to say, well, maybe this person's just an American doing American things in America. And maybe they're exactly the same as you. And maybe they wanted to be treated exactly the same as you, instead of being babied all the time. And then the person on the right says, oh my goodness, we got someone over here. They're not white, and I'm sure I'm going to hear about it. I'm sure the first thing out of their mouth is going to be, oh man, you are such a white racist, blah, 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 bigotry, blah, 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 slavery, blah, 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 oppression. Like, that's my expectation going into this conversation. I don't have high hopes. And you see, that's just as bad. Now, both of those people are not racist. They're not saying, oh, this color is bad and I should hurt this person because of their color. But they're very racial. They're racially aware that they see this person in their particular race and they say, okay, what's my script? What is the list of experiences I've had so far that dictate this interaction? And so instead of seeing that person as an individual, they look at the color of their skin and say, no, that's the one for Africans. This is the one for Asians. Here we go, Hispanic. That's what I do. Okay. So, yeah, and then you just go from there. Like, that's how so many people act. And that's why people think NPC. That's why people think you aren't really there. You're not really treating people like people. You're a non-player character because you're just running off of a script based on inputs. And, there's more examples than just race. There's the sexual orientation or the how do you know if someone's vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you, right? Like that kind of thing. Where my mom is vegan, but you wouldn't really know it unless you were asking like what she wanted to eat. Precisely because she's not vegan because, oh man, hurting animals is so awful. Like maybe she's an individual and she has her own reasons. Maybe she needs a low fat diet, and so she can't have any red meat. And maybe she's lactose intolerant, so she can't have any dairy. And when you cut out all of the red meat, even stuff like eggs start to, not sit well in your stomach. And yeah, you can have fish every now and then, and that doesn't hurt nearly as much, but it's still not to her diet to make sure her cholesterol is well. And so there's perfectly valid reasons for her to, be vegan without you having to assume everything about her. There are big exceptions all over the world. For every type of group you try to slice someone into, there's going to be an exception. And so if we want to surround ourselves with exceptional people, well, then we should treat them like individuals. We should treat them like people. Not like demographics. Not like they are, predictable and exactly A or B. You don't have to slot people into these categories and then read your script about, oh, how do I interact with this category? Instead, you can always act like yourself. Just be nice, kind-hearted person. And if they're a jerk, then they're a jerk. But they did that to you. That is something about who they are on the inside, not who they are on the outside. Not some preconceived notion. Someone starts swearing at you, you can feel like they're a jerk. Because you got to know them first. So it doesn't mean, all hunky-dory, we are the world, everyone's like brothers and sisters and everyone's together. Like, yeah, we'll get there one day, I hope. But we're not there yet. But in the meantime, just give people the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, I know they got a tattoo or a piercing. I know that they dyed their hair this color or that. I know that, they're wearing these types of clothes. I know that all this stuff. And yeah, there are definitely warning signs. If they seem dangerous, be careful. But remember, they're a person. And maybe all those things on the outside, maybe they're the exception. Just be careful when you do that. But if you do that, then you are going to end up probably coming off pretty uniquely. And that's a good thing. Because then at the very least, they won't call you the NPC.